So the tech guy was looking for me earlier. Now I know why. This thing doesn't work. Can you hear me all right? Yeah,
Do you want to use
okay. There are two that work. Thank you very much for taking time on your Sunday to come join us today. My name is Sharon Hill, and I work for the UN Environment Program. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this event today as the representative of UNEP, that is both the implementing lead of the GEF 7 Sustainable Cities Program and Generation Restoration. More importantly, UNEP as the organization that works with cities, regions, and countries to set the global environmental agenda. So when people ask me, why does UNEP work with cities? The reason really is we work with cutting-edge cities that are prepared to take the science that we bring, that can be quite challenging to and move forward with that science at whatever stage they are at, working closely with our partners ICLE and the Global Environment Facility, C40 Cities, GCOM, and the World Resources Institute, of course. UNEP understands that cities are the ones at the forefront of the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So I have my colleagues and I are very often in the contact group meetings, attending negotiations. But when I'm listening to them, talking, for example, about Agenda 25 on the biodiversity climate link, I often wish that there was a city government official in the room to tell them, well, you know, in my city, this is how it works, this is how it's going to happen. Because the reality is, many of these agreements are going to be implemented at the local level. So I'm not going to make this long, and my colleague Irene will kill me for not using these, these notes. But I think that we are better placed with our, we lost a bit of time, and I think it would be best if we listen to to Gregor and to Laura, who will set the scene and give us some reflections around the Global Biodiversity Framework and Target 12 implementation from their own experiences. So let me start with Gregor Robertson, Special Envoy for Cities in CHAMP and Mayors for Climate, Global Ambassador, Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Over to you, Gregor.
Thank you. I think this one will work. So good afternoon, everyone. It's honored to be here and good to see lots of familiar faces. And lots of these conversations that we've been having over these few days here in Cali, thinking, what can we talk about today that takes us forward even faster, rather than telling the same stories and sharing the same concepts. I wanted to just first of all highlight the work that I'm doing on the CHAMP initiative. Just in case you haven't heard about the CHAMP initiative, we haven't had many opportunities to really highlight multi-level partnerships and then get traction. We've had lots of acronyms and programs and attempts to get national governments working collaboratively with subnationals, and they haven't gone anywhere, and it falls apart on politics generally. To be really frank, and a conversation I had in the session we were just at, the best partnerships that we had with our federal and provincial governments in Canada from the local level were when we had really strong, dedicated partners from outside of politics, from outside of government. They had to come to the table with resources. So financial institutions that showed up and were saying, we want to support this, we are going to be partners, not just on the planning and financing side of it, but we want to support it implementing and monitoring. We want this to follow through all the way. When those partners were at the table, we were able to get incredible advances done. The Great Bear rainforest was protected on the coast of BC, and it was protected by basically far-right federal and provincial governments that typically would never invest at that scale in nature or climate or indigenous conservation-based economies. These are antithetical to what they were in power doing on a day-to-day basis. But because the local, the indigenous, and the partners from both financial sector and from the NGO world and academia all came together so compellingly, it was an offer that they couldn't refuse, to quote The Godfather. The governments that typically would never support that politically, it was a win for them. They're like, okay, we'll do it. We will support it. We will invest in the local communities. We will invest in indigenous. We'll invest in nature. We'll put our portion in, knowing that they're leveraging significant support from other partners. So I think that's what's happening in many countries where there's this polarization between national and local, cities, states, and regions. The CHAMP initiative emerged out of Dubai, COP28, and to all of our surprise, 72 countries made the pledge, signed that pledge. We've never had 72 countries sign something that said, we will work with cities, states, and regions on climate action. We will engage them in our long-term plans, our NDCs, NBSAPs, National Adaptation Plans. We will implement, we will finance. That's never happened before. We all know what national governments commit to on a regular basis, the targets they commit to, don't necessarily mean much. There's lots of paper, there's lots of commitments over the years, and collectively we are failing. Our planet is burning up, and we know we have to do much better. We have to see the action match the commitments and close that gap. I think we have an opportunity with CHAMP because there's some leverage around the pledge, but we're actually naming the gap here, the gap between setting commitments and not connecting them to the ground, to the partners that actually can deliver, that can plan, finance, implement. And I speak as a former mayor, that implementation side, we would never count on a national government to implement anything. They were great partners at times financing, maybe occasionally on planning, but we wanted to work with local partners, with financial institutions, private sector, and with the NGO community and academia, and the larger community was who we could get the projects done with. We could make the difference on the ground with. And cities are very good at convening and work that collective action together to get things done. We have to get things done now, given the state of our planet, given the tragedies that are hitting us. all around the world all the time and having just devastating impact. Given the pressure that the cities are under right now with urbanization, particularly in Africa and the global south, we can't even imagine this scale of problems in the global north. It's beyond comprehension that cities would have to try and manage that many people moving in and not being able to plan and build to make it sustainable. So I think we have a great opportunity with CHAMP. I think there's been fantastic work done on urban shift that we need to leverage here. We've seen great results with the first mover cities, the generosity of through GEF and GEF 7, the work that UNEP has done to coordinate that, the partners ICLE and C40 and GCOM, the city networks, the incredible depth of knowledge with the WRIs and other partners who bring best practice to the table. There's the seeds of something really impactful that can scale, and we all know that's what we need to do now. We need to scale this. We've done decades of pilots, decades of creative partnerships. We have lots of success stories. Somehow we have to break through this pattern of pilots and successful concepts turning into projects. We need massive scale implementation and execution. And so I'm excited for the opportunity with the next stage of this. I'm excited for the opportunity to leverage CHAMP, kind of converging the concepts that have worked the best to get us here today, and make sure that for cities like Kigali in Rwanda, who in the last few decades saw massive scale growth, a footprint, destroyed a lot of ecosystems around the city as they grew, like quadrupled in size in a few decades. But then the opportunity to work with urban shift, the opportunity to then restore ecosystems, wetlands, plant trees, and that partnership between the Rwanda government with the Kigali government, empowering people on the ground and investing in nature in their city to restore the city as it's scaled. We need examples of that from the toughest challenges in a city like Kigali to cities in the global north that I know we're going to hear from Seattle and examples like that today, where we have lots of tools and lots of ability, but we need to do this everywhere. And that synergy and fusion of climate and nature, we have to have them both integrated in all of this work going forward. I think we all know this. We just need to be broadcasting it at a much greater scale. So I'm thankful for so many bright minds being here today. The work is in front of us to take this and scale it up, and know that we have great support among mayors, the mayors of GCOM, which are now 13,580, I think, mayors that are committed in GCOM, the ICLE network of mayors, the big cities in C40. We have tons of leadership at city level right now, at the local level. And I think we just need to do everything we can to leverage that and see action on the ground and take the best ideas from Urban Shift and these partnerships that exist here today and scale them. So thank you for the opportunity to share that with you all.
Thank you so much, Gregor. Let me just find my cheat sheet. Because I really want to introduce Laura properly. So, apologies. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker today. We have Laura Bulbena-Haner, Manager, Cities for Forests of WRI Colombia. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Sharon and Gregor, for your inspiring words. I also want to thank the GEF and UNEP for creating this space, for allowing us to be today to discuss the city's potential in terms of enhancing green spaces and supporting biodiversity. Gregor was talking about the different things we can do, and I completely agree with you. I also think that what we need to do is rewrite the story of urban potential in global efforts to protect and enhance biodiversity. For far too long, I think we've mistakenly understood that urban areas and natural ecosystems are in opposition to one another, but now we know that's not necessarily true. We've thought in the past that urban development must come at the expense of green space and ecosystem health. But now I think we need to tell a different story. We need to put forth different projects that enhance the role of nature within cities, specifically the role of nature in terms of helping these cities adapt to climate change and become more resilient. As Sharon was saying, I'm a manager with the Cities for Forest team at WRI, and I have seen firsthand that by considering nature, specifically nature-based solutions, how they can play a vital role in enhancing ecosystem health, in enhancing human well-being, and other aspects that are very relevant to our cities today. I'll give you an example. I'm from Bogota, and I don't know if you've heard, but Bogota has been experiencing water droughts this year. We are currently under a water rationing system, right? But last year, WRI made the case. We showed how nature-based solutions are a cost-effective solution in helping the city, its residents, the water utility, local communities solve this crisis. And then we have programs like Urban Shift, right? The Jeff supported partnership between WRI, C40, ICLEI, and UNEP that are working to change the narrative and the on-the-ground reality around cities and nature, right? Urban Shift, as you know, and as Gregor was mentioning, helps cities adapt integrated approaches to urban development, including, of course, the very important role of nature and nature-based solutions. Urban Shift has provided capacity building trainings, geospatial analysis workshops, also a lot of opportunities in terms of learning from others. There's been peer learning exchanges amongst the different cities. And ultimately, what Urban Shift is doing is it foregrounds best practices for urban nature-based solutions, inspires action, and guides cities toward implementation of projects that have these components. We've already seen the impact, the benefits of such activities. In cities like Marrakesh in Morocco, that's grappling with intense heat waves and the pressures of urban development, Urban Shift hosted a geospatial lab earlier this year with city representatives, right, in terms of how strategic urban greening spaces could help cool the city and create an equitable development. So we're seeing themes in terms of course, nature, nature-based solutions, climate change adaptation, resilience, but we're also talking about creating equitable development. During that lab, participants who were guided by the Urban Shift technical staff were able to create a context-sensitive plan for green space expansion. And what's so interesting about that is that the plan will fit directly into the city's climate action planning efforts. So we're seeing a connection between everything that's related to the technical aspects, but also what leads directly into the policy and plans of cities. Last year as well, here in Colombia, Urban Shift hosted a cohort of Latin American city representatives in the city of Barranquilla. And this experience was all around learning from the city. Barranquilla has done a lot of projects in terms of greening spaces and providing public space for its residents, including its very famous initiative called Todos al Parque, or Everyone to the Park. And these peer exchanges among cities are a great experience for other cities to feel inspired, as is the case of the city of Teresina in Brazil, who out of this experience, this peer exchange with other peers in the region, they were so inspired that they are now piloting a rain garden in their city and are developing a citywide afforestation plan. So here we're seeing how these exchanges can lead into action in other cities. However, despite all these great results, all this action we're seeing, we need to be aware of the challenges that cities face to put forth projects that have nature and nature-based solutions and that seek to tackle climate adaptation and resilience. Last summer, I had the opportunity to participate in an Urban Shift City Academy for Nature-Based Solutions in the city of San Jose in Costa Rica. And there I had the opportunity to talk with the different city officials in terms of the barriers and challenges of implementing nature-based solutions. I'm a finance person. For me, the first challenge, I'm always going to say it's finance, right? We've heard UNEP's or seen or read UNEP's figures in terms of investment in nature-based solutions. Finance for nature-based solutions is less than half than what it needs to be by 2035, and it's less than a third of what we need by 2050 in order to limit climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius, halt biodiversity loss, and achieve land degradation neutrality. But I know that finance is not the only barrier, and it's at times the barrier that comes in at a more later stage, right? We first need to change our mindsets. We need to change residents' mindsets. We need to change the narrative behind these type of projects. There is still a pervasive mindset that nature-based solutions are not effective solutions, right? That they're not effective infrastructure solutions for cities, and that they cannot deliver other types of benefits. While we, I think here in the room, we're all aware that they can. When we design these projects, we're not just trying to mitigate the island effect, the heat island effect within cities, or to help cities become more water secure, or to help them reduce disaster risk, right? We're also talking about how these projects can provide human well-being, can provide spaces for recreation, and can enhance and protect the biodiversity that we find within cities. So collectively, we must work to rewrite this narrative to show that urban nature-based solutions do in fact have that potential in the long run. We need to highlight and celebrate the successful cases. We're going to do that in just a minute. I've done that, Gregor did that as well, but we need to continue sharing the message that it's possible, that some have done it, and that there are programs like Urban Shift that are here to support cities. With that, I'll end my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Indeed, the Urban Shift Partnership has brought a lot of knowledge to the cities that we work with. Just to give you an idea, colleagues, this is a network of close to 100 cities globally. So there's a lot of promise and a lot of work that is being done under this umbrella of work. Next, we're very honored to have as a moderator for our next session. And on this part, I'm going to ask Gregor and Laura to kindly move to the audience side of things. I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for today, Kobe Brand, Deputy Secretary General of ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. Sorry, colleagues, my days have been starting at 6 a.m. all the way to negotiations at 10:30, so it's been a tough week.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you very much. And yeah, it's a long name. It doesn't really matter. It's just ICLEI, huh? So I would just like to say to our colleague and friend and famous scientist in the room here, one of many, one of several, Deborah, isn't it great that you and I are standing here and there's so many organizations and networks talking about nature in cities? Many of you won't know perhaps that it was Deborah in a big, big way that planted the seed, first of all, when none of our networks were focusing on biodiversity. Was it about 20 years ago, talking to ICLEI, saying that ICLEI must start a program focused on nature in cities. And look where we are now. So many organizations are embracing this topic. And I just want to pay tribute to those people that started the process and planted the seeds. And I just want to remind us all that Deborah said a couple of things that I've heard her say here at this COP and many other places as well, that if we're talking about a 1.5 degree world, our ecosystems will collapse. So I understand that we can talk about nature-based solutions to address climate and to address many woes in society and the world. But if we have no nature, if those very systems collapse, what's the point? You know, you are nature. Everything here is nature. If we don't preserve and protect and restore what we have on this planet, climate change, addressing climate change is not going to get us there, you know. So we have to understand that it doesn't really matter what entry door we use, whether it's climate or nature or food or geopolitics, whatever it is. Let's just focus and understand that we've got to restore peace with nature in one way or another, and that also means how we live, how we consume and produce. Anyway, that's just a reflection. I just had to say this, Sharon, because I was thinking about this when our two friends from Champ and Gregor and GCOM and WRI were talking about urban shift. And this is also very much into urban shift. So over to our panel. Fantastic panel we've got here. Please come onto the stage. You know who you are when I introduce you to save time. And I put my glasses on. And I use Sharon's phone. So AP Diaz, Superintendent for Parks and Recreation, the city of Seattle. Seattle's been named a couple of times in this summit, really a front-runner city. AP, nice to have you with us. Sebastian Fermani, Secretary of Environment and Development Mendoza from Argentina. Liesel de Villiers, not far from where I live, from the Overstrand Municipality, Divisional Manager, Environmental Management and Conservation, Overstrand. If you've not visited Hermanus or Cape Town and surrounds, please do, you're missing out. Liesel, you're very privileged to live there. And then Red Avelino, head of the Parks Department of Quezon City in the Philippines. Also absolutely a must visit. So I'm going to ask you one question only, but I'd like for you to limit time so that we can circle back and that you can respond to each other in terms of what you hear each other saying as well. And it's around Target 12, which was decided in Kunming, a breakthrough moment for all of us who hold biodiversity and nature dear and understand that it needs to be part of our urban lives if we move forward. But it's about the financing around it. So the question I want to ask you, and sorry that I'm using your phone here, Sharon, but thank you. Could you share the experience of your respective cities to enhance green spaces and urban planning for human well-being and biodiversity around Target 12, and attracting financing specifically for the implementation thereof, focusing on both the setbacks and challenges, but also your breakthroughs and the actions that you feel we can take to, as Gregor said, scale up, scale out, fast, urgent, and at scale. So I'm going to start in any order we want to, but I think we should say ladies first. Liesel?
Thank you. Yes, I think I would just like to start by saying just a little bit of background of the Environmental Management Department of the Overstrand Municipality. I started there in 2010, and I started with 3 people, or 1,358 kilometer square area. And we had no environmental management plans, and I had a 1.2 million rand budget to deal with that entire area. So now we have 16 permanent people, we have 54 contract people, and I have a 27 million rand budget, which is, after 14 years, not enough, but I think it's quite an achievement to get there. We need way more. But basically what we did to ensure that we can improve our biodiversity management is to develop a integrated development framework that speaks to our SCF and that speaks to our integrated IDP. And that basically runs until 2050. And it has all our biodiversity achievements in that document. And what it also has, it has an environmental management overlay zone. And the overlay zone encompasses everything from our catchments to our coastline. It includes our mountain catchments, it includes our riparian zones, it includes our coastal zones, it includes our protected areas and also buffer zones within our protected areas. So the most important one is our urban layer. And that speaks to when we develop, how do we develop within our cities? What are our important layers that we need to look at? What are our important open spaces? Which are the wetlands that we need to protect? How far do we keep our barriers, our protection areas around our wetlands, around our areas, our special milkwood forests, for example? So all of those are within our urban layers. So I think that is the most important documents that we have, and we are currently reviewing those, and we would like to have those gazetted with provincial government. And I think the biggest struggle that we had was convincing our government, our politicians, that as a coastal town, we're going to have risk layers along our coastline. We cannot develop within our risk areas, and that we're going to have to retreat because of coastal surges, etc. And we had to do public participation processes as well, and the public didn't want to hear about it. They want to live with their feet in the sea. And but with long public participation processes, they realized that they're going to have to retreat, and they cannot live within these coastal risk lines. So it was a long process, but we finally got there. So I think that was the biggest struggles that we had. So these documents, of course, are strategic documents, and we started implementing these documents. That was very difficult because we didn't really have the funds to do that. And I think that was the biggest challenge, is that provincial government, national government just says, they just shrug their shoulders and say, we don't have the funding, we can't help you. And it was really having to go to our private organizations, our NGOs, and saying to people, working with them and saying to them, how can you assist us to implement these specific documents? And we are very lucky that we've got very environmentally conscious people in Hermanus, actually in the entire Overstrand. But my biggest challenge is that provincial and national government need to take up their responsibilities. They need to realize that we are the imminent risk that lies ahead, and they need to start being proactive and not look and not only act when we have disasters. They mustn't only act on Section 30As and then say to us, okay, now we can act. And the disaster has happened. And the wetlands has washed away. And the rivers has taken, and the floods has taken houses and important infrastructure away. They must listen to the specialist that has done the research, and they must listen when we say the imminent risk is there, let's act and implement the important processes so that we can be proactive.
Thank you very much, Liesel. So, what I'm picking up, one of the things I'm picking up is how important it is to get it into your formal documents, your plans, your forward plans, because then you can budget for it, and upstream also your provincial, national government. So that's one way. One shouldn't always look outside for funding, but one can look inside in your own fiscus, in your own national government. There is still much more funding nationally available for anything than the development aid globally can provide. So thank you for making that point. I'd be interested to learn more about how you're going to get your communities to retreat, but that's another topic. Let's go now to Mendoza, and I'd like to give the floor to Sebastian Fermani from Argentina, from Mendoza. Please give us your perspectives.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, in this year, we have worked in renaturalization process and on the implementation of nature-based solution. We share many challenges with other cities around the world. Climate change has a big impact in our city. We cannot forget that Mendoza is a city built on an arid ecosystem, which is very fragile system. And we do a lot of work on governance and finance process. In 2020, we declare the climate change emergency, and we create the climate change committee with all the sector of the society, citizen, different institution, academic sector, private sector, and all the environment policy are discussed previously in this space. We also create with the private sector the Green Fund for Sustainable, which every year finance different research projects that respond the needs of local government. This is very important because many times we don't have the scale of research to make good decision. So with this project, we transform our environment policies. We also using green bonds in the market. We was the first city in Argentina to do it, so we are very proud. And I think environment governments make stronger environment policies. So we have to work to keep biodiversity in the urban agenda and make stronger the governance, environment governance in our cities.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet, but a lot of points made about private sector investment, innovative solutions like green bonds, also again stressing policy, upward and downward, multi-level governance, or it could also be called whole of government and whole of society approaches. So let's now go to Seattle. And I would very much like to hear from you, AP. You work in the Parks and Recreation Department. Many cities often tell us they've got wonderful opportunities for parks and green spaces, but to convince their politicians to invest in this is almost an impossibility. What is your experience in Seattle around open green spaces, but around Target 12 and finding the financing to do that at the scale you want to do it at?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us here today and letting us share our common perspectives. In Seattle, you know, I feel we're so blessed because we live in a wonderful environment of evergreen beauty. In fact, the name of the state is the Evergreen State, and Seattle is called the Emerald City. So both connote nature, both speak to the natural and the beauty of the environment. And if you've ever been to the Pacific Northwest, I'm new to that region in the last 2 years, and every time I fly into that area and I begin to see the majesty of the state unfold below me from the airplane, I see the trees and the volcanoes and the water, and I'm reminded that the state is really just one big park. So now how do we convince that and put that into action so that we're continuing to build nature-based solutions? And we are fortunate in Seattle that right now we are aligned politically from the federal level to our state governor, who's a climate champion, to our mayor, Bruce Harrell, who has initiated and instituted a One Climate Seattle action plan. So right now we're in that sweet area. But I do remember being at COP last year in Dubai and meeting with some representatives of the federal government after their negotiations. And they were imploring me that we needed to do more and do it quickly because funding could be jeopardized by the outcome of the election that's coming up. I know the whole world is watching our election with bated breath for these very reasons. It really impacts the entire world. So we want to do more, so we need to act quickly and we need to do things boldly and big. I could talk here today, and I want to keep my remarks short, and I see Garrett from the Seattle Parks Foundation here. One of the best examples, you know, we have alignment of our city government, and we've been able to access federal funds, state funds, and put matching local funds. But we can really do more by reaching out to our corporations. And some people don't think corporations and environmentalists can work in the same space. Often our partners are NGOs, people with great hearts, nonprofits, right? We need corporations to step up and be responsible. Some people didn't want COP to be in Dubai last year. my personal opinion, we need everyone at the table because these radical solutions require money, require investment. So our next goals in Seattle are going to be working with our private corporations, of which some of the biggest corporations are centered there: Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, Starbucks, Google. It goes on and on. They are doing great things, don't get me wrong, but we could be doing much more. To echo Deborah's comments, we need to do more. And it's the very reason why there will never, COP16 will not end at 16 or 17 or 18 or 19, right? Our planet is continuously evolving. And so we have really good people in Seattle. We have great programs with our community that reforest our land through the Green Seattle Partnership. We use community activists, but I really want to lead into our corporations. And I don't want to have our city government put mandatory taxes on them as if it's some obligation to give back to improve the environment. My dream is that they will see the value of clean technology, green infrastructure, and also prepare our children. Our children are the ones that are going to save our planet. Children, women, people who have been taking care of our land and communities for generations. And lastly, I want to end on something that I'm really excited about in Seattle. We have great partnerships with our First Nations, our indigenous Coast Salish people. In the Litusi language, there is no word for the wild. Everything was together. There was no distinction. And we are learning from them as the original caretakers and stewards of how to take care of our land. But we have great opportunity. Seattle is receiving many immigrants, refugees from around the world. I think it's the one example where you can bridge the First Nations with the newest arrivals that both have a desire to touch the land, to improve the earth, and to do work together. And I think we need to lean into these communities that are arriving because oftentimes they're the ones coming with farming, with agrarian, with water. They have the knowledge, and we need to see that value. And that's how we're going to heal our planet. That's how we're going to do it in Seattle, I hope. And we're really excited about it. But I'm also just so inspired by everybody here today because this is a global effort. And I want to end too. People say, why, Seattle, why are you here? Sometimes my staff ask me, why are we here? And I'm reminded oftentimes that of the scripture that says, to whom much is given, much is required. I feel it's an obligation. If we live in a state that's a park and we're blessed with resources and technology and innovation, we have a duty to share that. Climate is not about trademarks, right? We're not about patents. Whatever solution is working in Mendoza or that's working in Honduras or that's working in Nagoya, let's share it, right? We love to share this. We need to share this. And that's how we're going to advance. So I'm really excited. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And just before the session, we talked about how we're going to, from our side, through Cities with Nature, help share your stories from the Emerald City. So, I mean, things are, you're saying you're in a good space now for a little while. Let's make sure and let's hope it's for a much longer while. So, let's challenge this guy and say, if it's for a bit of a longer while, let's make sure your government also joins this convention on biodiversity and then bring us there to your Emerald City and your Park State for a COP. I think that will be amazing. Seems like you're up for the challenge. So, but I think, you know, the scale of what you're talking about and the fact that you see the link between the city and the state, that is amazing. And also the link, seamless link all of you are making with climate change, because the one goes without the other. You can't address the one, not the other. But what I'm also seeing and seeping through is the very strong understanding of the need to work with a human rights-based approach and equity. So fantastic. And on that point, I'd like to give the floor to another Global South colleague from Quezon City in the Philippines. Let me just get your right title here, Red. Red Avelino is the head of also the Parks Department in Quezon City in the Philippines. Over to you, Red.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to inform everyone that I'm really allergic to public speaking. And, you know, this is a nightmare for me. But every time I hear each and every speaker, I draw strength and confidence, knowing that, you know, I'm validated in the direction where our city is going we're on the right path. I'm also really honored to be in the company of trailblazers like AP. I'm actually starstruck being seated beside him, knowing like Seattle, they have the overlay walk, if I'm not mistaken. They're the masters and the experts in public and private partnerships, and this is something that we would really, really appreciate if we learn from them. We have Francois as well, who's a trailblazer. I think most of the world have benchmarked in Paris, and they're in my opinion, they're the leaders in this field. And being with all of us, it really helps knowing that we're all aligned, at least at the confines of these four walls. The struggle, like Laura mentioned earlier, the struggle is when we all get back to our own countries. There are different priorities, especially with urban planning. But before I get to that, yeah, I'll revert back to my notes, if you don't mind. Yeah. So for Quezon City, just as a background, we're around 16,000 hectares with a population of roughly 2 million, 3 million already. I've had the I'm not sure if the term is unfortunate or fortunate, a fortunate task and challenge of doubling the number of parks. We have 300 parks now, and the mayor wants to double it by year 2030. I also have the task of planting 1 million trees. It's no joke. I think if you do the math and compute it on a daily basis, the figures doesn't look that encouraging. But hearing all of you, I think it gives us strength. So I hear a lot of programs that we are also doing already. I hear sponge cities. I hear pollinator gardens. I hear the green corridors, which we are also doing now. But we have a lot of challenges in Quezon City, if you allow me to revert to my notes. So first would be fragmented policies and overlapping jurisdictions. The Philippines have numerous national agencies involved in urban planning, environmental management, and land use regulations. So this leads to overlapping jurisdictions, fragmented policies, and lack of coordination. Among cities as well, different interpretations of national laws. It's also a challenge because we're all doing our own thing. Yeah, there. Hold on. Yeah. And then we also have the lack of comprehensive urban planning and climate adaptation framework, wherein no strong national mandates are in place. And then, of course, the rapid urbanization growth and land use competition. So Quezon City is one of the fastest growing urban areas in the Philippines. As a result, there's a high demand for land, residential, commercial, and infrastructure development, leaving limited spaces for green areas. So as we mentioned earlier, the competing priorities, so cities' budget allocation must address various needs, including social services, housing, and transportation. So in our part of the world, green spaces are considered as a nice to have amenity. As a result, funding for green spaces competes with other pressing urban priorities. However, when we start considering the social and economical benefits, as well as the importance of green spaces, the narrative will be different. Unfortunately, it is normally realized too late. So we've had it with normally when the natural calamities arrive. That's only when we realize that funding that could have gone to natural-based solutions, which is actually cheaper and would actually solve the problem. It goes to other infrastructure. For example, in Quezon City, we're focusing on flood control projects full of cement, which will not happen. And it's going to be very challenging, especially if we're the only ones doing it and neighboring cities are not. So, having said that, it's quite a challenge for us to convince our national government to invest in nature-based solutions programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Diverse and wonderful examples. I think we've run out of time, but I want to thank the panel very much for your diverse examples, and I'm handing at this stage the floor back to Sharon. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Kobe. If you're following the chat of Generation Restoration, there's been a call for a COP in Seattle. So I think you've committed for an entire country. And I won't. I will not attempt to summarize this wonderful conversation because you've given us a lot of food for thought. I'm going to hand that task over to Alok, who is the thematic lead of the Global Environment Facility on Urban and Infrastructure. Alok, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It was so inspiring. I mean, I have been getting inspired last 3 days. You know, as I said in the morning today in the Urban Mayors Forum, you know, we consider cities as economic centers, and you know, if you listen to all these great stories, we find that cities are actually amazing ecosystem zones, and they can do so much. You know, they can do so much. Let me, you know, before summarizing, let me start with a positive news that I just got yesterday. So it is from an urban shift project that we have in Costa Rica. Our colleague from WRI mentioned about it. So the news says Costa Rica to open 3 new urban natural parks in San Jose greater metropolitan area. So this is an amazing news that has come during this time. The Urban Shift program is working in the city, in the metropolitan region, and this has been developed through a decree. It's like an executive decision, and the park will kind of enable many other cities in the country to follow something like that, and through the global platform that we are supporting, we will take it to the world. So so this is I just wanted to start by saying that how inspiring it has been. Today, you know, it is again, I mean, for me also it's very difficult to summarize. You heard from the practitioners, from you know, champions on what is actually happening on ground. I'd just like to pick up a few key messages which I think is useful. At the beginning, Gregor very well mentioned that, you know, how important is partnerships and in, you know, getting this agenda elevated, and the partnership is needed, or action is needed from all different segments. And this is exactly what the city networks like GCOM, the ICLE, the C40, Cities with Nature, the global platform for sustainable cities that we have created, the urban shift that we have also supported are actually trying to do. So I think it is the time that, you know, we really find ways to get all of them together in, you know, in the forums or in the declarations and all, so that, you know, all these platforms are doing specific work to support. For example, CHAMP is working at the political level, Cities with Nature is working on this at the nature-based solutions level, the Urban Shift is working on building capacity of cities, the Urban Nature program that you heard about, which now World Bank, UNEP and ICLE is leading, is focusing on financing. So, you know, how we can get all of them together is I think is quite critical if we really need to act quickly, because I heard that word many times today, both in terms of the crisis that we are facing as well as some of the political situations that are coming up. So it's really important to act quickly, and for that, this partnership is important. And on this acting quickly, I had such a wonderful discussion with Deborah a while back, where she clearly alluded what the science is saying, that, you know, that the tipping point, or actually there is no tipping point, it is like a boundary we shouldn't exceed, is coming so soon, and it is coming sooner in cities, and the science is clear about it. So, you know, that's so how we can ensure that all the partners we you know, who are working on cities can work together. So that was a clear message, I think. There was also a very useful message on, you know, there are really good best practices. There are prototypes available on what nature-based solutions look like, how it can be implemented. For example, uh, uh, I think the city of Mendoza shared that how it got into their development plans, or maybe you shared it, that how it got into development, national documents. So how do we get into some of these policies? Getting embedded in the development plans is important. So, so that example, then there are other examples of technology solutions, governance solutions, partnerships like private sector engagement, engaging indigenous nations, communities, because I can't agree more that they know best how to manage nature, right? And we have to learn from it. Getting private sector involved is also very important. So continuing to share these best practices and messages is fundamental. Let me see if I have any other things. Uh, I think these, I don't see any. I mean, I think there are many other things. If I try to repeat, I won't be able to say it in a much more effective manner. But it seems like there is a great progress happening. It's great to have the panelists here from environment departments, from parks. I think what is fundamental is we get them along with the others, like the real estate developers, the people who are really, driving the urbanization together, to make sure that they listen to each other and understand why we are talking about urban and nature, and make sure that the urbanization which we are seeing is so much gray infrastructure driven is nature driven. So that is really the key, and I think the COP in Montreal and the COP in Cali has really paved the way. This is my first time in a CBD COP. I have been leading the cities program for the last 6 years at the JEF. I have always been to the climate COP, and coming to the biodiversity COP was so useful, to see that how cities can actually contribute to the biodiversity goals. And I would like to again restate here is that biodiversity, climate, pollution, these are all interrelated challenges, and cities are the best places where they can address all these challenges in an integrated manner. So with that, I'd like to thank the panel for sharing inspiring stories. There is a lot to take back for all of us who are supporting or working with cities. So thank you so much. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Alok. And on that note, we will close this session today. There's no other event after this one. So feel free to, I'm sure you have questions from our panel or the people around, so feel free to mingle for a little bit. The Jeff is a partnership space, right?
Yes, so I just wanted to say that you're most welcome to our pavilion. Thanks for coming here. The coffee here is amazing, so please enjoy. And also, the space is also public. You don't need to have an event to come here. If there is nothing going on here, please feel free to use the space to learn from each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I got too excited. I didn't want to end.